welcome back to YellowCard Vanguard. I'm your host, Toku, from It's Toku TV on Twitch. It has been a long while, and Clan Collection 5 and 6 have already been out for quite some time, but I figured this is going to be a mainstay of the channel, so I've taken some time out of my failing job search to give you, the viewers, what you want. My based, red-pilled, and Giga takes on the new cards and supports for Clan Collections 5 and 6. Once again, we need to preface the video as well as the rest of the series by letting you know that these lists are made at face value using my skills of card evaluation. They will need playtesting to fine-tune, but I hope they will serve as a good reference point for filthy net deckers to piggyback off of. Welcome back to Clan Collection Cores. Pendulum Effect. You can remove 6 spell counters from your field and special summon this card from the Pendulum Zone. Then count the number of cards you control that can have a spell counter and destroy up to that many cards on the field, and if you do, place spell counters on this card equal to the number of cards destroyed. You can only use this effect of Endymion and the Mighty Master of Magic once per turn. Monster Effect. Once per turn, when a spell or trap card is activated, or effect is activated, quick effect, you can return one card you control with a spell counter to the hand, and if you do, negate the activation, and if you do that, destroy it. Then you can place the same number of spell counters on this card that the return card had, and while this card has a spell counter, your opponent cannot target it with effects, also it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, and when this card with a spell counter is destroyed by battle, you can add one normal spell from your deck to your hand. 185 words. That's how long the full effect for Endymion the Mighty Master is. The longest card in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, let's go ahead and read together what the full effect that Eradicator Draconic Descendant after riding over Vowing Saber Reverse would be. Cont. When you would ride this card, if your Vanguard is a unit with Eradicator in its card name, and this card is placed with all of their abilities until end of turn. Act on the Vanguard rearguard. Once per turn, cost a Soul Blast 1 and choose one of your opponent's front row rearguards and bind it. Your opponent chooses one of his or her back row rearguards and moves it to an open front row rear circle. Vanguard circle once per turn. When its attack does not hit, cost Counter Blast 1 and discard a card from your hand. Stand this unit and it gets Drive -1 until end of turn. Also, act Vanguard circle once per turn, cost Counter Blast 1 and lock a rearguard. Your opponent chooses a card from each of their hand rearguards and drop and binds them. Auto Vanguard Circle. When your opponent's normal unit is bound other than from their deck during your turn, your opponent searches their deck for up to one card with the same card name as the bound card, binds it, shuffles their deck, and you choose one of your units and it gains a 5,000 power until end of turn. If your opponent did not bind a card, that unit gains 10k instead. Auto Vanguard Circle. When this unit attacks, if you have one or more cards in your soul or on your rearguard circle with Vowing in their card name, cost a Counter Blast 1, a Soul Blast 1, choose one of your rearguards and stand it. If your damage zone has 4 or more cards, stand all of your rearguards. 249 words. That's how many words Endymion's Draconic Descendant has. Eat your heart out, Yu-Gi-Oh! We win. Also L, also Ratio, also Hulk, Mine, and Scyther unbanned. Yes, we might still have Percival and MFD unbanned at the time that I recorded this. Oh, okay, maybe we both suck. Coming from Clan Collection 5 and 6 is 3 new Grade 3s for the Narukami clan, 2 for the Eradicators, and 1 as a generic Grade 3 finisher of sorts. Let's take a look at them. Starting us off is the corrupted form of Vowing Sword Eradicator, Vowing Saber Dragon Reverse. On the Vanguard Circle, Act Skill, Counterblast 1, lock a rearguard to have your opponent lock a card from hand, drop and rear. And on the Vanguard Circle as well, has the Vowing Skill, where if a normal unit is bound from outside of the deck, your opponent binds up to one of the same card from their deck, and if they do, you buff a unit 5k, and if they don't, 10k instead. Finally, the best effect. When this unit attacks, if you have in your soul or on your rearguard circle a Vowing card name, you can Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, and stand a rearguard. And if you have 4 more damage, stand all of your rearguards. I don't think there's anything I dislike about this card. The fact that the restand happens on attack rather than after prevents you from healing out of Limit Break 4. The fact it's also not once per turn lets you also get 2 board restands when combined with the Draconic Descendant. The first effect also allows you to punish your opponent for heavily extending as well, so all very good. The next card is a friend of all of ours, Eradicator Sweep Command Dragon, Steve. Famed for his hand trap status in the later stages of G, he has come back once again. when placed on the Vanguard circle or the rearguard circle, and you can Soul Blast 1 to bind a front row rearguard and drag something from the back row up. Once per turn, when your opponent's rearguard is bound, you can also bind another front row rearguard. And then, if your damage is 4 or more, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, gain an Axel, and Superior Call an Eradicator from your drop zone to rearguard circle. Another super solid card to the Eradicator grade 3 lineup. Not sure if it's strong enough to push the Vowing-esque playstyle out, but I like the fact that it does accelerate marker farming and make a horizontal playstyle to Eradicators possible with more fronts, and it also has a very easy method of completely blowing up fields turn after. Finally, the last card, and a bit of a meme, but I've definitely seen it eat ass and take names. Armor Break Dragon. Very simple, very stupid, could possibly accidentally steal undeserved games. A non-once per turn skill to Counterblast 3 and bind all of your opponent's front row rearguards, and then for each empty circle that they have in the front, ABD gains 10k and 2 crit. Then, when ABD attacks, if your damage is 4 or more, he also gains 10k and Sentinel Restrict. I think Armor Break Dragon shines more in a deck that doesn't burn Counterblast at all, and for me, that deck is Vanquisher. It also seems more of a counter win con than a main win con, something to counter heavy Axel farming decks like Pale Moon or Garble Paladin. I think its existence you don't even have to run in your deck. Its existence itself is a very small buff to Vanquisher, since these Axel farm decks will have to try and kill you from 3 to 6 or risk accidentally dying to Armor Break. Let's take a look at the sample list that I have brought up. Starting with the 2 Eradicator base list, there are going to be a lot of common factors between the 2 decks, so let's introduce them. We're going to run 4 copies of Eradicator Draconic Descendant, and being able to ride it over either VSR or Steve gets us 2 very different boss units. I'm also going to mutually run 2 copies of Gauntlet Buster Dragon. Lately, Gurgit and Tavis have been getting very popular outside of Steve Maidens, and having a silver bullet for those matchups could prove very useful. Break Riding Descendant over Gauntlet Buster Dragon gives us restanding multi-crit threat and can kill from low damage, and to go alongside, I have a single copy of Desert Gunner Gaibon to give the second EDD plus GBD swing a Sentinel Restrict. For the grade 2 lineup, we're going to be running commonly 4 copies of Zuitan, 4 copies of Spark Rays, and 3 copies of Suhail. Spark Rays gives us strong on-hit pressure, and Zuitan gives us good early game aggression while refining itself, and also acts as a good supporting unit while we're on GBD. Spark Rays also helps us fix hand on its ride, and it's also a good target to ride if we're forced to ride Descendant over it, since we can copy the on-hit. You may also notice that I've opted for Suhail over Cho, and that's because a lot of Counterblast gets funneled into our new bosses between Steve, VSR, and VSR is able to restand through its own skill, whereas Suhail can also perform a costless bind to start VSR's Chain Bind and plays with Steve's extra Axel Circle and Superior Calls very well. In the grade 1 line, we run 4 copies of Nusku, 4 copies of the Eradicator Demolition Dragon, and 3 copies of Mighty Bolt. The obvious 2 being Nusku and Demolition Dragon. Nusku being able to give us a filter for a better Eradicator name, and Demolition for being an asshole. Our last set of grade 1s is Mighty Bolt for some selectivity in our grade 3s. We want to be able to get the VSR or Steve to Descendant re-ride, or at least the VSR to VSR re-ride if we're not at LB4 yet. Now, with the common cards out of the way, let's take a deeper dive into the 2 lists. So, for the Vowing Saber Reverse deck that you see here, obviously the main boss unit, Vowing Saber Reverse, is ran at 4. What's important to note is we opted to not run the original Vowing Saber since it sucks, and the Chain Bind effect already exists on this newer, cooler Chad version. As for the trigger lineup, we've opted into running 8 crits. Thanks to the Chain Bind effect on Vowing Sword Reverse, we'll get enough power on our units that fronts aren't really needed. Yes, fronts could also be an option considering we are restanding all of our rearguards, but that comes at the later stages of the game, whereas the Chainbind and power buffs come all the time. Now onto the Steve version. Water is wet, grass is green, I'm depressed and suicidal, and we're going to run 4 copies of Steve instead of Vowing Saber Reverse. We are also going to run 8 front triggers instead of crits, because as long as we're at 4 damage, Steve gets 2 Axels on his first turn out, and another 2 when we break right into Descendant. A 6 rearguard front row would benefit from those front triggers a lot. I think the main difference to note is that all of the strength in Steve is backloaded into the Limit Break 4, whereas for Vowing Saber Reverse, we still get most of what we want pre-Limit Break 4. Finally, a look into a sample Armor Break list. As stated before, Armor Break works better as a counter win con alongside Vanquisher, so here. There are like 2 slots that I consider flexible in Vanquisher right now, and it's either the book or Armor Break Dragon fighting for those 2 slots. Both of them are a very heavy cost investment that Vanquisher can afford that looks for either an incredibly heavy tempo swing or to completely blow out the game then and there. At the moment, this list runs one of each for the respective matchups it matters in. examples being Armor Break for the Axel matchups and Tactics for everything else. I think it's okay for these to be at 1 copy as long as we have 4 copies of Mighty Boat, since he can pick up whichever one we're missing if we see it, and the deck has a metric fuck-ton amount of draw as well. If there's anything to change, I might change the Healians to vanilla heals for the fact that the list runs a lot of grade 3s already, and as such, the natural shield value in the deck is lower. And having the vanillas might be better, especially since we have good counterblast dumps in the book and Armor Break. There is a small meme deck that Armor Break can run, and it runs the Eradicator core to find their gunners Gaiban and Gongsun as a countercharge engine. With 5 open counterblast and you have 4 of the counterchargers, you can use Armor Break 3 times in 1 turn to get, I think it was 14 crit. It's funny, it sometimes works if your opponent doesn't lock you at 3. Clan Collection 5 and 6 gave Narukami some very cool premium tools to play with. Narukami has already been a force to be reckoned with in premium, and Clan Collection 5 and 6 gave it some very nice tools to play with. I think the very obvious one everyone looks at is Vowing Saber Reverse being able to replace Vowing Sword's place in the current Eradicator Stunverse deck. Eradicators have the ability to ride skip into Descendant and get a very strong advantage that way. And being able to close out games with another Descendant Break Ride onto Reverse for its Limit Break 4 ability to restand the board. Between Stunverse and Reverse's Axe skill, we're looking at a lot of hand rip, a lot of binds, and a lot of incidental power being shared to the board, including premium cards such as Varina Esperagia, a restander on its own. So even if we ourselves are not at Limit Break 4, we still get a lot of restands off to go for game. Steve's new V Premium Retrain can also make a comeback in the premium format as well. Already being in the very strong Eradicator package, First Thunder Draco Kid plays very well with the Narukami G-Guards that we have, and can let us Superior Ride Steve on our opponent's turn, giving us interruption on our opponent's turn with Steve's on-play effect. Steve also highly maximizes on Exterminate to Dragon as a first ride, being able to on-ride and front row wipe, then go into Exterminate for a very large front row buff. Finally, although underlooked in the V Premium side, I do want to point out that Armor Break Dragon has some premium applications as well. At the time of recording this, Ribbles is one of the boogeymen of the format. Good job, QC team, you forgot Odysseus existed, and that is a deck that makes a lot of Axel circles. It's not out of the realm of reality to expect a Ribble player to make around 5 to 6 Axels on their first turn at grade 3. That is good, because that means Armor Breaker Dragon will be able to come down and swing for around 82k 13 crit with the Sentinel Restrict. Of course, your opponent has to play into it and hit you to 4, but sometimes people will get lost in the sauce and will play into the Limit Break 4 ability. I still think Vanquishers will be the deck to beat even after Clan Call 5 and 6 with how resource efficient that deck is. But I can't say I'm upset at the card quality that Eradicators got in this Clan Call. Reverse is a strict upgrade, and Steve and Armor Breaker Dragon both have their very cool niche applications. I think it's fair to say that when you see your opponent playing Narukami, it won't always be Vanquisher now. In any case, that is it from me for this episode of Clan Collection Course. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this and leave a comment down below because every little bit helps. This has been Toku from YellowCard Vanguard. Toku out.